Hello and welcome to this special LinkedIn live event today, brought to you by BrandPie and hosted by me, Ollie Ballard. So why are we here? Well, in the next 20 minutes, we are going to discuss the findings of a report that BrandPie have produced together with Griffith University and Future Normal called Purpose Matters, which has reviewed the purpose statements of the FTSE 350 companies. The 30-minute LinkedIn Live also marks the launch of the report, which we will send to our audience after. So let's crack on and welcome our speakers. We have Nick Barter. Nick is a Professor of Strategy and Sustainability at Griffith Business School in Brisbane. Welcome, Nick.
Hello, everyone. Lovely to be here.
And we have Joanne Kerr. Jo has over 25 years experience of helping businesses become purpose-driven and is the head of purpose at BrandPie. Welcome to you as well, Jo.
Morning, everybody.
Good stuff. Well, so we've mentioned the report in the intro, and it's a really, really important report about purpose. I just wanted to get a sense for our audience to set the context of why did you kind of commission the report, if we want to start with yourself, Jo?
Yes, I mean, we know and we see it in our clients a lot that purpose drives performance. We're seeing that on a daily basis. But when we looked at the general market and studies that have been done on purpose, there wasn't anything that specifically looked at sort of connecting purpose and performance. There'd been studies around talent, there'd been studies around growth, but we really wanted to build on this body of knowledge. And obviously we've got this great partnership with Griffith. It was really important to us to bring that academic rigor to the study so that we were really looking at it from a really statistical perspective.
Brilliant, thank you, Jo. And Nick, Jo mentions that academic rigor there, which I've read the report, and it certainly kind of has that. I just want to get your, building on what Jo said, your executive summary of the report.
Thank you, Ollie. The report covers three main areas. It looks at purpose through the lens of company performance. Then it looks at purpose through the lens of the length of the statement. Then it looks at it through the lens of the content of that statement. And what we did was, it's obviously the FTSE 350, so we gathered all those companies, gathered all their purpose statements, and then we gathered all their financial data, and we looked at how many had a purpose statement versus didn't have a purpose statement, and it was about 75% had a purpose statement versus 25% didn't. And we looked then at how those companies were performing on a series of financial and non-financial measures relative to those without a purpose statement. And what we found was companies with a purpose statement performed much better on certain key metrics than those companies that didn't have a purpose statement. Now, that's a correlation. We've yet to fully identify causation. That's a whole research study we need to do in the future. What we also found was that the length of the statement mattered. This wasn't something I think we ever set out to do, but I think it was one of those moments. I'm pretty sure I was riding my bicycle and I thought, I wonder if the length of statement matters, because we saw a wide range of statements. Statements ranging from about 3 words to about 90 words. And what we found was, so we just chose the midpoint, the median, and we found that having a statement of 16 words or less correlated strongly with performance in terms of financial and non-financial measures. And that was interesting to us. It doesn't mean to say every purpose statement needs to be 16 words or less, but what it means is succinctness matters. But it's not just that succinctness. We'd also say that the context around that purpose statement matters too. And then the last thing we looked at was really, really close to what BrandPie's approach is for developing a really great purpose statement. And we looked at, does the purpose statement connect what the company does to what the world needs? Does the purpose statement lay out a range of stakeholders? And I've forgotten the last one. Jo, you'll have to remind me, but maybe, Jo, you could also pick up on what we found about what the world needs and that content of those statements as a kind of final summary of the report.
Sure. And I think, what we found is that less than half were actually connecting what they did to what the world needs, which was really interesting, and found that, they were either talking a lot about themselves or talking about the world, but actually sort of failing to connect those 2 points in the middle, which I think, we can come on and talk to a bit more. But yes, it was and we also looked at was the purpose enduring? Was it sort of now oriented, or did it actually look to the future? And again, not something we had a specific hypothesis about, but we were really intrigued to see, was that having an impact on how those statements were being constructed and lived on a daily basis.
Cool.
No, thanks, Joe. Nick, it's really interesting what you're talking there, particularly about the length of the statement, the succinctness. And I think, you riding your bike was almost the Newton with the apple moment, wasn't it? That the importance of that, and we want to dig into that more later. But Joe and Nick, I just wanted to bring our audience in here, and there'll be lots of people who are familiar, obviously, what purpose means, but in a business context, and you talked about the now and relating it to the world. Like, what do you think purpose should mean to a company?
Yeah, I think, it's changed a lot. We run an annual CEO purpose survey. We've seen the sort of understanding and the sort of adoption of purpose change a lot in 5 years. But I think where we are in the world now, it is the why. It's why you exist as an organization. But it's really about building that sort of clarity and that bigger picture in terms of why you exist in the world, I think is the simplest way of talking about it. But it doesn't act in isolation. I think when you also connect that as was one of your corporate drivers alongside your ambition and your strategy, it's building that really strong story for an organization. I think where we are in the world at the moment is that, trust in government is at an all-time low, but actually people are looking to organizations to really navigate some of these really big challenges that we're facing globally. They have the resources, they've got the talent, they've got, this fantastic opportunity to actually make a really big impact in the world. And I think that's, for me, where the real opportunity is here, and to give people that sense of, why they turn up, why they actually work for these organizations. That's, that beyond the transaction, we're kind of, the world's moved on a lot from where we started in this space.
Yeah,
thanks, Joe. That's really interesting.
If I could, Ollie, great point, Joe.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things is there's not a business out there pretty much that didn't set itself up to solve a problem in society. And, that's the why. And that's what the work that BrandPie does, is it helps organizations reconnect to that core so they can navigate turbulent times, and particularly the turbulent times we all see ahead of us. And I think from a kind of professorial business theory perspective, business theory for too long has been driven down a cul-de-sac of business theory is all about the numbers. And what you do with purpose is you connect to the why, you connect to the raison d'etre, the philosophy of the business. And that's what moves people. So any CEO watching this, anybody running an organization watching this, people break through walls when they believe in what the organization is. Nobody believes in money in quite the way they believe in an organization with a strong purpose statement that actually connects what they do to what the world needs.
And I think just building on that as well, that's probably why this report is so important, because it's actually connecting those two pieces together. It's not an all or nothing or a this or that. Actually, what we're looking to see is that you can have that emotive, that cause, that passion that Nick just talked about, but actually it appears to be driving greater performance and succinctness and a lot of other momentum within organizations for those that have a purpose. So it's not either or, it's not a decision anymore. It's actually about better business.
No, I think that's really. I mean, my takeaway so far, obviously, is just it's all about that why, isn't it? And I think that's so important for companies, because you start with it, but sometimes on your journey you can maybe lose sight of it. So I think having a report like this can certainly make companies think about that again. And I'd like to just dig into the report a bit more now. And you mentioned at the top, Nick and Joe, you've broken it down into 3 areas, which were performance, succinctness, and content. I'd like to start with performance, because you found that the FTSE 350 companies which publicly made their purpose statements known are outperforming those that didn't on 2 key financial metrics, which is return on equity and return on assets. So can you tell us a little bit more about that? And we'll start with Joe.
Sure. I mean, I think really interesting findings, and the way I sort of take these is that these organizations are they're more efficient, so they're actually extracting greater value for shareholders out of the assets and equity that they have in the organisation. So that sense of clarity and being able to drive greater returns, I think, was really, really important to us. And actually, again, saying we sort of see it and live it on a daily basis at BrandPie, but actually being able to see that on a big data set, I think, was really powerful.
Great, thanks, Joe. Nick, it'd be great to get your thoughts.
Look, I think Joe summarised it well. When your organisation knows what it's doing, when your organization knows why it's there, and we say organization, what we really mean is when your people know what they're doing, when they know why they're there, they focus and they don't get lost on things that aren't on message, things that aren't on core. And so, at one level, the results don't surprise me. When you've got a clear why for your organization, and actually we'd expand that a little bit further and say, when you've got a clear why, where, how, what for your organization, what I would call in my kind of future normal approach, a clear narrative framework. Your organization knows where it's heading, it knows what it's doing. And that that comes up in the financial results, remembering that financial results are outputs, right? The inputs are cultural, right? The inputs are always cultural. So what we're saying is, and what this work shows is, you get those cultural inputs right, you'll see the results in the outputs.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nick. You mentioned, Nick, about that, employees wanting to break down walls and really kind of, I guess it's that 5%, isn't it? Because times are tough, but there's still some amazing winners out there in the economy. And I guess it is that cultural input that makes that difference. So I just want to talk now about the companies that don't have a purpose statement, that aren't connecting with their why. What does the prognosis look like for those?
Tough question. I mean, I think, the data showing that those that do are outperforming those that don't. But I think that's, we're in a point, I think, with purpose that it's relatively well known. We had similar results from our CEO purpose survey last year. I think it's, for those companies that don't, I would say question where you are and think about, actually, is now the time to actually do that, particularly given the current market context. Are your people clear about, why they get out of bed every morning and come into the office or work from home? And really look at that from both the definition of it, but I actually think more importantly about that cultural momentum. So how is it actually going to be driven through the organization? I think, as all of these data sets build and we start to get a clearer and clearer picture, some businesses are going to thrive in the next 10 years. We've seen it in lots of studies. A lot of people are sitting there not sure how their organization is going to fare in the next 10 years. But I think this is just another strategic lever that they should be considering as we go through periods of disruption and transformation to help guide that process. Obviously, we're always here to help. This is our day job, really, helping organizations who either don't have a purpose or actually realize that maybe their business has changed and what they crafted some time ago really needs to be redefined in the context of the world, and actually their opportunity to play a greater role in that.
Yeah, Joe's nailed that. There's companies out there with a purpose statement. They're going to be, they'll be fine. There's a bunch of companies. The context of the question was companies without a purpose statement. Look, they may have a purpose statement inside the organization, but not outside the organization, as it were, not on their website. That's what we know, right? And so what I'd say to them is, have a good think about that, because you're missing an opportunity to enroll your customers. You're missing an opportunity to enroll all your stakeholders in what you're trying to achieve as an organization. You enroll all your stakeholders in what you're trying to achieve as an organization. They'll come along for the ride, and as we've seen, the results will sort themselves out. So I think if you haven't got a purpose statement, or you haven't got a publicly available purpose statement, as Joe said, give us a call. We'll have a chat.
And I'm going to now move on to the actual purpose statements, but I just wanted to, quickly get a sense of it. And I guess this isn't just the preserve of the FTSE 350. This is for any company, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, purpose is relevant to all organizations of all sizes. And I think, we work with, scale-ups, startups, right through to large, global multinationals. And it's as relevant. I think often, some of the scale-ups or sort of startups are inherently purposeful because they've, as Nick said at the beginning, all business generally has started to solve a problem. There's a unique opportunity in the marketplace to solve. But I think as they scale, and very much as they scale fast, documenting that, making sure that as new talent arrives in the business, that they can also, tap into that and be part of where you're going is really, really important. So I think, some of the big organizations, it's not that they may have started with a really clear purpose, but that gets lost along the way. Often, I think, as you grow, as you internationalize, all that sort of thing. So there is this real importance, I think, of sometimes taking a bit of a step back and making sure that it is visible and understood by everyone that you need on that journey. But it's definitely not a big customer thing or a small organization thing. It's very applicable to all.
Yeah, sure. And I think just to build on that a little bit, Ollie, and look, this is not our first go around. We released we had a very soft launch of a report a few months ago, which was on the ASX 100. The results are the same. ASX 100 is the Australian Stock Exchange Top 100. They're generally, not exclusively, but smaller companies than you'd find on the FTSE 100, 200, etc. We found the similar thing. So, we're fairly confident these results are robust, and they apply up and down the scale of all businesses.
Thanks. And just going into the actual purpose, I think the audience will find this really interesting. Obviously, what you said, that the kind of median for the ideal statement was 16 words, and companies that had that were outperforming those that didn't. And I mean, this is a really difficult question because it's going to be intrinsic and different and objective for each company. But what makes a great statement of 16 words? If you've got any examples or kind of threads?
I think
that's for Joe.
Okay.
That's the meat and potatoes of what BrandPie do for companies.
Sure.
Joe, you can answer that.
And I mean, again, to me, it wasn't a surprise. I think, everyone can remember a statement or a sentence of 16 words. We saw some that were 74 words. No one's going to remember that. I think we always say, absolutely, number one, connect, what you do to what the world needs. Find that spark, that bit in the middle that really unlocks innovative thinking. It makes people think differently about the organization when you've got that point of connection. Authenticity is absolutely key. This isn't about trying to be different or, trying to do something. It's about finding that true, kernel at the core of an organization. And I think, what we find often is that it's not about crafting or creating a purpose. It's about going back to an organization's heritage or roots. It's about uncovering what might already be there or was there, certainly as the original intent. And I think that's often a really rich place to start in organizations, and it's got to be inspiring. So it's got to have some stretch in it and make people think beyond the day-to-day and that, what I'm doing today. It should be, I guess, a tool for both kind of strategic decision making, but also ideation and opportunity, because every business should be evolving all the time. The world is changing, and I think a really good statement does that. And I think when you see one, or when you finally work with an organization and you get to that point of crafting, there's almost a physical reaction. Everyone goes, oh yeah, that is us. Of course it's us. It's almost a really felt response, which I think it's not about trying to put on a different jacket. It's about finding, who you are. And I think that's the real beauty in this, that can then drive quite tough metrics and quite big strategic metrics through the organization.
No, thanks, Joe. And anyone looking for external kind of support on their purpose, they definitely do talk to BrandPie, of course. And one thing that
hang on, Ollie. We might add, just for a bit of fun, we might add. Definitely talk to BrandPie, but also, if you want to explore very different perspectives, you might want to talk about the future normal approach too. So I'll just throw that in for fun too.
Of course, no, definitely, and definitely BrandPie and future normal. But one thing I was just going to touch on then, you mentioned it earlier, Joe, the 44% that you felt didn't connect their statements with what the world wants. So can you just dig into that a little bit more? So I think it'll be interesting to our audience.
Yeah, and I think this is, to me, there was sort of a split camp, right? There were either organizations that were very centered on themselves, so it was just all about what they did, which when you kind of read it in isolation, it sounds like a features and benefits list if it's purely about the organization. Or on the other end of the scale, there are organizations that just talked to the world that they want to see. But actually it feels quite hollow, and it's almost like a wish that the world's going to change without actually centering themselves as being a problem solver in that point. So we see that a lot, sort of one or the other. So when you talk about what does, a great statement, I always think a sort of a what and a why. So a sort of a two-part statement is that we do X, Y, and Z to deliver, A, B, C. And sort of coming up with that sort of really simple construct that people can recite, and everyone in the organization needs to understand that that's the sort of beauty, I think, of getting them right, and not trying to compete with some of your other sort of strategic metrics. A purpose plays a very key role, that enduring why, it's not trying to talk over or get confused with, you know, where you're going, your vision for the organization, or what you're doing and how you're delivering it through your strategy. But together, purpose is a really strong anchor in that whole story. So I think those are the sort of things that we look at and we work with. But ultimately, you know, we also tap into the passions of the people in the organization. You look at where you can make financial returns, you look at what you're passionate about, what you're uniquely placed to deliver, and you bring all of that in together. It's actually, you know, to get to a very simple statement is not necessarily an easy or quick process, but it, you know, getting it to two lines really appears to be the way to really land this, to kind of get the traction and the performance that we want to see all organizations deliver.
I think to build on that a little bit, Ollie, as well, a purpose has to be about something bigger, right? And so, you know, I'll say this because I'm a professor and I can get away with it. Purpose statements about shareholders really don't move anybody, I don't think. I can't, that's a kind of an assertion, but I don't think they move people really. When you make your purpose statement about a bigger idea than just the organization itself, you know, to go back to Joe talking about that physical reaction, I've seen it. I've seen it with companies I work with in Australia. You see the moment and the mood and the relaxation and the, yes, I'm about this, and this is something I can get behind. And, you know, so for me, a really good purpose statement is about something bigger. And the thing that's inherent to the work I do is about a generational perspective. And what does that mean to actually operate, given the challenges we face at a global scale are decades long and will outlive the life of any one CEO, and will likely involve challenges for their children and their children's children. Purpose statements that really land, I think, take that generational perspective. And so they're enduring, to come back to one element of the report, but also they might well identify the next generation as one of the, or stewardship, or some kind of notion of that as being a key raison d'etre for this business. And I think that's, those kind of ideas move people, they move the organization, they move stakeholders, and they enroll people in what the organization is trying to do. So yeah, that would be my little add-on. Thank you for letting me do that.
No, Nick, that's really interesting what you say as well about outliving the CEO or the leadership as well. I guess that's important because you don't want a statement that's just all about that current leadership team, because it's not going to have longevity, is it?
That's right. I mean, look, you know, business press, business media, everything awful lot of it focuses around the CEO for a whole bunch of understandable reasons. They're the notional leaders of the organization. But what we often forget is they're one individual, right? Cycle times are typically somewhere in the 5 to 10 year period. You know, yes, there's people that do less. Yes, there's people that do more. And a good purpose statement, and I might swing to Joe in a second, it does endure through time. And as a consequence, if a purpose statement is too tied up in the CEO, you know, CEO leaves or the CEO changes or whatever, the company loses momentum and it loses an opportunity to actually continue to kick goals while, you know, changes may happen in the C-suite. And so one of the things Joe and I have talked about is how one of the ways Brand Pi can help organizations is, you know, helping make sure that CEO, any changeover CEO, they really understand the purpose of the organization. They really understand what it means to drive that through. And that's beyond words on a page. It comes back to that feeling in the room thing, right? It's not just whether they're words on a page or reflected in the communications material or whatever. It's whether you feel it too. And that's a whole piece around aligning people, about bringing leaders together, and about getting them to connect to something beyond self. So.
Well, thanks, Nick. I think that's really important. Joe, anything you wanted to add to that thread?
Yeah, and I think it's something we're seeing more. So, you know, we're working with, you know, large professional services organizations as an example, where a new CEO came in and absolutely the purpose endured through that, because it was so embedded and inherent in the organization that, you know, it wasn't about coming in and creating something new. There was no way, because it's who they were. And so it was more about ensuring that they were coming in and being part of that and taking it forward. I think, we're saying if you're doing this right, then actually a new CEO actually should be building on what's already well ingrained in an organisation where people can really act and own it. It almost becomes too difficult to change. It shouldn't change because it's been set for the organisation, not for the CEO.
That's a really good point there. Well, they're almost coming in as custodians, aren't they? That are carrying the baton for the next.
Yeah, and hopefully it's a reason they want to go there in the first place. Ultimately, talent attraction is a massive part of this, and actually feeling connected to an organisation and feeling that it's something that you want to be part of and be a leader of and part of it, contributing to its future success.
And that Joe, you just said a great line there. I think that notion of, is your purpose set for the CEO or is it set for the organisation? Hopefully anybody watching this, can ask themselves that question. And if it's set for the CEO, if you come and chat to Brand Pie or us, we'll have a view on that. If you want it set for the organisation, we can help you do that.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. I mean, that was that concludes it. Almost perfect time in there, Joe and Nick. But I just wanted to end, a kind of final thought for our audience. Obviously, we've covered some really important topics, and I do encourage everybody to go and download the report and have a good look at it, which you can do on Brand Pie's website, and we'll be sending it to everyone who's kind of viewed this as well. But yeah, so just some final thoughts if we want to start with yourself, Nick.
Final thoughts. Gosh, you've caught me on the hop here. Look, it's been a real pleasure to been in this session with you, Ollie and Joe. It's been a real pleasure producing this report, with Brand Pie and working with Brand Pie. They're a great organisation to work with, super open, super inquisitive and have curiosity, and at their core, they're here to help organisations, improve and get better. And in so doing, not just for organisations, but for all of us as a whole. So it's been a real privilege to be part of this. And, I look forward to how this might lead to other conversations and having those conversations. So thank you, Ollie.
Thank you, Nick. And Joe?
Great. I think probably just the three takeaways, really, just in terms of practical things, is to start where you are. So, think about, if you don't have a purpose statement, then think about what that could mean for your organisation. But secondly, I think thinking about, if you've got a purpose statement, are you operationalising it? I think that's a big word that we're using. This isn't, it's not a communications job. It's actually an operationalisation job. Thinking about how that purpose is living through your culture. How is it expressed through your brand and for what you stand for in the outside world? How is it changing things like leadership and thinking about future generations, as Nick talked about? So I think there's a lot of work that we do there, and I think there's a huge amount of opportunity for organisations to really take the clarity that a purpose gives you and really draw that through all of the other facets of the organisation. And we're seeing organisations do that a lot more. And then I think the last one is kind of living it and making sure that leaders are the front, they're there at the front of the organisation. They have to be living this on a daily basis and giving everyone that works in an organisation the power and the agency to be able to live this purpose on a daily basis. So those are the kind of three big things that I would say, just sort of considerations, takeaways, and likely, same as Nick, I would just like to say it's been an amazing journey. We've been on such a journey of learning, I think, with purpose and with the future normal approach to business and with the way Griffith have been able to support us. And it's just the start, really. There's a lot of exciting new things to come this year. So really, hopefully, we'll be doing another one of these again soon and talking to everyone about the next bit.
Thanks, Joe. And I think, I just want to stress as well, obviously, this is the culmination of many, many months of hard work that Joe and Nick and lots of other people have put in as well to put together the report. This is obviously a reflection on the report. But so
yeah, actually, on that, Ollie, can we just do a particular call out? Obviously, not just to Brand Pie, but and me and Joe are authors, but also three colleagues of ours, which would be Professor Chris Fleming, who's a co-author. Dr. Akihiro Amura was great on the financial analysis and really, pulled all those numbers together for us and did all the statistical analysis. And then lastly, Max Berger-Schmidt, who was fantastic in helping us understand how to code the content, really checking the report, helping us craft a lot of the narrative too. So whilst we're the tip of the iceberg, there's a whole team behind us, right? And they did fantastic work, and it would be amiss of us not to just thank them on this public forum.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks,
no, definitely. I think, they're a great shout there, Nick and Joe. And No, and yeah, just go and download the report, everyone. That's I think our final takeaway as well. I just want to say thank you for tuning in. Thank you again to Joe and Nick. And like I say, let's keep the conversation going and let's enact some of the takeaways that Joe and Nick have given us. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, so I think, just want to go off live.